Ready? I'd like to call the July board meeting for the Central School District to order. Comments from the community are entertained during the time designated under Communications Public Comments. If you wish to speak to the board, please fill out a comment card and turn it into the board secretary or the board chair at the beginning of the meeting. Speakers' comments in this forum are limited to 3 minutes, but the board welcomes additional information in writing. Personnel laws prohibit the board from hearing public complaints about an individual in an open meeting. All complaints must go through the board's approved process as outlined in Board Policy KL. This form may be found on our website or by calling the district office. Typically, a speaker's comment is taken under advisement to allow for time for the board to review an issue. However, the board chair or other board members may ask a speaker for additional information or may convey to the speaker some information that addresses their comment. Please note on the speaker card if you would like to receive follow-up communication, and if so, what avenue is preferred. Again, thank you for your attendance at this meeting of the Central School Board. And so I will turn it over to you for the agenda.
Agenda is, there is no modification to it, so we can move forward.
Okay. So the first item up is the election of officers for this year.
They snooze, they lose, right?
That sounded like 1, 2, where's that?
Yeah, we have it.
So, do we got to start with vice chair or chair?
I think it is up to you all in which order you want to go in.
Do I hear any nominations for the chair?
Steve Love.
Hasn't it been practiced that the person that's a vice chair, we normally nominate for the chair?
What we did in the past was he did 2 years and then I came up here. So I was vice for 2 years and he was chair for 2 years.
So you've only been chair for 1 year?
Yeah.
What now?
You've only been chair for 1 year?
Yes.
I withdraw my nomination.
Okay. Do I hear a nomination for the board chair?
I nominate Steve Mosier.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
So there's a nomination for myself, seconded by Peggy. Are there any other nominations? I move the nominations be closed. All those in favor raise their right hand.
That was easy.
Motion's unanimous. So do I hear any nominations for the vice chair?
Oh wait, you get to vote, right? I'm just wondering since we don't have a quorum.
There's a quorum, so I have to vote.
Yeah, got it, okay, we're good. Okay.
So for vice chair, do I hear nominations?
I nominate
I'll second that.
Are there any other nominations? I move that nominations be.
Just comment there, you know, I'm fine, no problem serving as vice chair again, but it is an opportunity if we want to think about someone replacing me either in the vice chair or chair role. So if you, Peggy, or Dawn, if you guys have an interest.
I was thinking next year might be a good year.
Next year, okay. It just, that would mean probably Steve or I would have to stay on as chair for another year, and then, and that's fine, so. Okay.
So do we hear any other nominations? Move the nominations be closed. All those in favor of Steve Lovely as vice chair, raise your right hand. Motion's unanimous. So we have that done. Any communications? Anything?
Not today, no.
Anything over there? We have no board comment. I think we're down to C's.
Speeding right along.
Thank you very much. In your packet, if you click or turn to the summary financial report, you will see that were no significant variances as of the end of May 31st. And that was the report for this particular meeting. And that's all I have till we get to a whole bunch of my action. So do you see it, Steve? It's the
Does anybody have
appropriations
any
report.
questions?
I don't know what it looks like. Print it out.
So this is as of the end of May.
Right, the end of May. That was. So you will get the June 30 report at the next meeting, which of course will be our sort of unaudited, detailed report as to where we are, where we ended up this year. That's all I had.
Okay, hearing nothing there. I think we're down to Alex. So Alex is going to talk to us about meals.
Or superintendent's report.
I just have, I don't know, it's probably on the bottom of your page.
Yeah, we've got different order here.
Oh.
Alex is.
It is. It's because the printed version printed last week and the agenda has been updated since then.
So the next one is the superintendent's report. So we're gonna, on the,
Superintendent's report.
yes, on the live version, which again is why we are doing a soft start to the transition of being online, to see how this goes from that perspective.
Okay.
I just have two quick updates, and I know I shared a little bit of with the board that we have received, the district has received and been awarded the 21st Century Community Learning Grant again. We're very excited to announce that. The allotted amount, which we received actually today for the years of 2018 through 2023 is $473,362. So that's going to be a 5-year grant. The focus, as we've shared, is a little bit different. It's going to be focused on extended learning opportunities. So the grant was more specific that there does need to not only be enrichment, but also tied to learning opportunities for students who need a little bit extra either before or after school. The approach that we're looking at is really providing a K-12. So we previously were doing 1st through 12th grade, and now we're going to be putting kindergarten into that as well. The other change is we're going 5 days a week. So we are very excited about moving in this direction. The goal is to support between 100 and 120 per day, whether that be in the morning or in the afternoon, as we start to build those with the principals and the site coordinators. So we're excited to be able to start sharing more information with you all as we pull the principals in, look at what we're currently doing, and build upon that moving forward through the K-12 system, but really focus on that extended learning time that we're going to be able to do within each of the buildings. And then we started summer school today. So today was our first day of summer school. Today we have a total of 121 enrolled. We had 89 show today. We're very excited about that. What's exciting about this year's summer school, we're actually doing Learning Lab classrooms. So we have current Central School District teachers as well as bilingual scholars. So the bilingual scholars, through our partnership with Western Oregon University, are getting hands-on teaching experience for the next 5 weeks with guidance from fantastic teachers. The model is K-8, so you have classrooms that are K-1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then 6 through 8. And so again, it's going to be exciting to see. Had a few, if you've ever, very much like the first day of school, there were a few students that struggled and transitioning, had a few tears. There was a lot of walking up and down the hallways, getting used to the environment and building relationships with their teachers. So it was just a really good start to the day to be able to see that. And again, this funding is specifically focused on our ELs and migrant students. So the funding is really through Title III our transformation grants, and then working through the state migrant funding. So very excited, first day to have 89. They made phone calls this afternoon just as reminders. So I'm assuming we're gonna have a full house here throughout the rest of this week. So that is my report.
And it's all good here.
It is all here, yes. Because of some of the temperatures that we dealt with last year, we made a choice this year to, in the air-conditioned space, in case it does get hot, which it looks like it will next week, so kids will have good learning environments. Not that they didn't before, but the heat does make a difference.
Okay. So now it says it's board reports. So his upcoming activities is the next board meeting is August 6th. The OSBA conference, which I'm the only one going. And we have a planning retreat on August 20th. Everybody needs to remember.
You should have received an invite for that.
Adriana sent out a lot of invitations basically for the whole year for you to stick on your calendar. And all things are subject to change. They're in marshmallow at this point. So we're down to the consent agenda. Do I hear a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
There's a moved and seconded to accept the consent agenda. All those in favor, raise your right hand. Motion's unanimous. So, we just did that. We did that. Now,
Cease. Now back to cease.
Thank you. So, well, personnel recommend, oh, that's part of your consent agenda. So, also in your packet, a resolution authorizing officers and signatures for 2018-19. And this again is a requirement. You will notice that we've gone away from, since we don't have a Rich anymore, we typically had Rich as our main signatory on our accounts. His signature appeared electronically. And in reviewing that, what's really helpful to us is to have somebody who is not basically, is a little more removed from some of the actual work, authorizing checks, authorizing invoice payments and things like that. And so in looking at our new structure, we had determined that a good quality person who will actually be pretty involved with a lot of different programs but won't have a lot of purchasing authority would be Jason Clark. So our new director of planning and program management is somebody who will be based here in the district office but won't have a lot of purchasing authority. So our auditors will love it if that person is the check signer, which means that he actually will be reviewing the items and the purchases. So now we need to enter the new board, the returning board chair to this resolution, because we had to leave that blank.
Do you get the bottom half of this fixed? Because it still makes reference to Rich and assistant superintendent.
Yep, it does. So Adriana will get that resolution redone.
And add Steve and Stevie.
Okay.
Yep. And that will, so where it does say Rich will be replaced with Jason.
And change the title.
Correct.
Not the title of assistant
Yes.
superintendent.
That is correct.
So we enter entertain motions to approve this resolution.
I would move to approve the resolution as corrected.
Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor, raise their right hand. Motion passes.
Thank you. So our next item is, as we've discussed for some time, the purchase of modulars and the intent to place those at Ash Creek Elementary. We've talked throughout the budget process about this, about while we still see the overall population growth slowing and our enrollment really not reflecting what appears to be housing increases in our community, we really don't feel comfortable making real long-term recommendations until we get the results of our demographic study. Flow Analytics has been working on that, and we are expecting that report sometime in August to bring to you. Until then, though, what we're looking at are those bubbles, those certain classes just in certain spots that really do have large enrollment. And what we've been faced with at Ash Creek for the last couple of years is that they have larger class sizes, they have the supports in place to deal with them. For example, they have chosen to have instructional aides in some of those bubble classes, but they don't really have a place to do any kind of small group work or pull-out work. We have put a special ed classroom in what's known as a pod in Ash Creek, so those centralized workrooms that were created. We actually put up some cubicle walls and created a small classroom out of that. And so looking at a way to accommodate that, move some regular instruction out of those pods and create space again for the small work groups and the pull out and the extra instruction that you need in a larger size classroom. So we looked at portables. We do have the money that is an allowable expense under our capital improvement fund, which is funded by construction excise tax. And so we have chosen to recommend to you that we go ahead and purchase a double portable classroom. This would be a brand new modular. It would be on the west side of the building. Thought we could throw it on the front lawn if we really wanted to make a statement, but I chose that would not be a good idea. So we're looking at a spot. We've already had a company come out and look at it and determine that it is suitable out there. And would ask at this point we consider making the purchase. Now we probably won't have installation until January, so there'll still be some juggling of those larger class sizes at Ash Creek until that point in time. But this will be a completely modern, portable 2 classrooms, ADA accessible bathrooms, and air conditioning, and we would be putting them on block foundation instead of slab foundations, so they would be able to be picked up and moved, right? So if we find that bubble, when that bubble moves up to Talmadge, if we have to pick up these portables and move them, we can.
What's the cost?
The cost for the portables themselves is attached here, so those are the attachments in the docket. The portables themselves, we were able to get on a pricing agreement that Salem Kaiser has negotiated. Since they are doing a lot of construction, they've gotten some really good pricing, and we were able to use their cooperative pricing agreement. So this dual portable classroom is $114,975. There's an additional $60,469 for plumbing, excavation, siding, electrical. So basically the site prep and the installation.
Since there's no attachment.
I'm looking at it.
Yeah, I'm looking at it too.
Under the suggested motion? Are you looking at an older version?
These are, so the website. Yeah,
Sorry,
the-
you're picking on this.
Anyway, these are some of the so that we are still this is why we did a soft start, because we're still
Yep.
learning. It's actually the one that is actually on the website is the most up to date. And
You want
so
one?
I thought there's still some of those things that we are learning.
So is there a way to download this stuff? Because I didn't even notice that there was, when I clicked on a link, it sent me to the website.
Yes, it should send you to the website. Yes, I think there was a previous link that was sent early last
in the
week,
email.
just to give you guys a glimpse of that, but it really is on the website to be able to get
However,
there.
when I clicked on a link on my phone, it automatically downloaded it instead of going to the
Oh.
website, which is strange. But
Yeah, here it's downloading for me automatically too.
anyhow, back to the topic. So
Anyway.
did we get
Sorry.
any, so given that we were using the Salem-Kaiser purchasing
Right.
agreement, we didn't get other bids then, is that right? Or
Correct. This meets the requirement that they have gone through the bidding process, and when they did so, they said other districts could use their bid, so we did not have to go out to bid. This company apparently is about the only one that makes these local, and they aren't made locally, they're made in state or something. So really reduces the cost of transportation if we use them, but by using the cooperative purchasing agreement that Salem-Kaiser did, we're not only getting the benefit of the quantity they buy, because they're certainly buying more than two, but we are getting the advantage of their negotiations.
And again, please correct me if I'm wrong, we originally had looked at potentially looking at this was gonna cost us about $240,000 to $275,000 as we initially started, correct?
Exactly. I looked at buying a used set from Beaverton that are about the age of the ones we have at IES, and buying the used one for between $7,500 and $10,000, and moving it here would have cost $105,000. Buying a new double ourselves, just sort of list price, would have been about $200,000. So we've got about $175,000, and that includes installation. The $200,000 didn't include installation. So this really seemed like a heck of a good deal to me, instead of buying used ones and transporting them here. And then this doesn't include, of course, technology, furnishings. We have some excess furniture in the district. We're not even sure if we'll need to buy classrooms of furniture, but if it did, we can still buy those things with the capital improvement funds that we have. And then we budgeted in the general fund some teacher supply type things for new classrooms.
So we think the idea with the modulars then is that they are transportable wherever we have the need. So rather than trying to do some type of complex redistricting right now,
Right.
let's go ahead and put the capacity into Ash Creek, continue to analyze overall population, sizing of our elementary schools. Let's next year work through a strategic plan for the district. So this is kind of buying us time, but no matter what, we think we need this capacity someplace in the district.
We
starting
definitely
right
do.
now.
And for example, then this could follow to Talmadge. Or if we get in a construction situation, we'll have a head start on that temporary facilities we need for construction. So I think we'll have a long-term use for this. We have places to put it.
Are the modulars across from the high school that we're essentially loaning or leasing to the county right now, are they certified as classrooms, or are they just office space? Because
so one of those is modular. The front part is actually stick built on the site. So the back one is the only modular, and I don't know. That's been there since.
There's a classroom.
Yeah, so we use that as part of the transition programming for the high school.
It's being used as a classroom now for a small group of people, but it's been outfitted as an office, basically. It's your old boardroom. I imagine it meets standards for a classroom. It has 2 entrance and exits and things.
And again, I think this is going to lead into, as we talk about looking at the facilities committee, as he said, when we get the analytics back of what does the growth look like, to be able to have those conversations. What we are hearing from different, both cities of potential building and growth is going to obviously play into that, as well as we have to have looking at that strategic plan of, are we seeing a major growth in 5 years that would dictate another school? I'm not sure that that's going to be the case. I think it will just be looking at either restructuring things or being very strategic in our approaches, because there are facilities around here. I'm just going to generally say that.
Well, we also,
that we can,
and the plan, the 6 extra classrooms we would have had at IES,
Yeah.
as early as this coming fall, potentially, had the bond passed, right? So that was to give us 6 classrooms to replace the existing portables at IES plus 6 classrooms. That could be enough once we get done with the growth study, can reconvene the facilities committee, relook at the plans we had in 2016 and determine, are those still where we think we need to go, or do we need to start over with a siting? So, yeah, several options that we will present. We will convene a facilities committee, get some folks back on that, and look as soon as we have those demographics this fall.
And since we did the rebalancing of the district, we've seen the most growth at Ash Creek.
Correct.
Is that true? So what is the relative sizes then of the elementary schools?
Ash Creek is a little over 500, 550, close to,
550.
Yeah.
554, 550.
Monmouth is the next, a little over 500, and then we have, the last time I think I looked at IES before the school ended was like 450. So there is, yes, we have very large elementary schools.
And that's typically what they say now. Elementary
Yeah,
schools of
should be
400 to
450 to
500 is not
500.
unusual in size if you can accommodate it space-wise, right?
And we've looked at, I think one of the things as part of this, and as we go through policy review, when we'll talk a little bit about that, the intra-district transfer, we have looked at numbers to see, okay, are there lots of students that are transferring into Ash Creek and or MES that do not live in that attendance area? There are handfuls, but I wouldn't say it's a ton of that, but that's going to be part of our conversation as he says, as we look at different things. I have publicly said, and we continue to say, that right now both Ash Creek and MES are closed unless you physically live in that attendance area. The only elementary school that we have open for opting in, whether you live in outside of our district, is into Independence Elementary.
So when we're looking at right now, presently, they're working at new development right off of Gun Club.
Right.
They got 40 some lots in there. They got 11 houses under construction right now.
Right.
How many typically out of a construction project like that, what do we potentially look at?
I think that's the part of why we hired Flow Analytics, to give us a little bit more understanding of what potentially the growth is going to be. Again, we have heard lots of things. Part of this is working in conjunction with both cities of where is that construction, if it is going to happen.
Right.
I also say, just because you build 40 houses doesn't mean all those houses are going to be filled with students or youth.
The typical ratio that schools districts use is 0.25 children per dwelling unit. Ours has been much lower than that in the past, and again, the new development, how many houses are we up to where our kids live? They're up to 80, 90 houses out there, and we've gained 10 kids.
And they're still building.
And they're still building, but we're not gaining 0.25 kids per dwelling unit
There's a lot of
yet.
kids out there, but they're tiny.
And so since she just had a grandchild that
Yeah.
lives there, and someday I might have a grandchild that lives there, we assume that will grow.
Yeah.
We assume that those young families moving in there will have children, but, you know, it used to be 22-year-olds, 24-year-olds, if they bought houses or moved into apartments and got married, they had children right away. Birth rates are delayed. You know, the average age for birth now is rising. And so now if they can afford to buy a house at 25 and they don't have kids for 7 years, then we have 5 years before we get those kids. It's a different environment. And that's what Flow is doing for us. They have some great area expertise in that. So we definitely, we definitely have to get that facilities committee together, and we have to be looking at something in 3 to 5 years. Whether that's a whole new school or our 6 rooms plus, or, you know, some other configuration, charter school, something else, then those are things we can answer better later. But I feel confident taking the plunge on this, because I certainly didn't ever want to see us buying portables and putting them at especially our prettiest building. But it's flexible, it's useful, it's something we will make use of in the future. If worse came to worse and we never needed it, we could replace 2 of the crummy ones at Independence Elementary that are falling apart.
Although it looks like it costs us $60,000 every time we want to move it.
Yes.
They're a little easier to move once you get them in town. Part of the cost of moving
I'm
it.
just talking about the site prep.
Right, yeah, site prep, that's true. Unless we move it to IES, which already has lines out there.
Because really, if you look at the bubbles where the next large bubble will go to Talmadge. And so as he says, in a couple of years, that could be until we really see where and what that growth, or if that growth is going to happen, for us to have a pretty intentional conversation. It does give us flexibility for the next 3 to 5 years. And if we do get information back that it is going to be, with the growth coming, there is a potential that you will need another school, then that gives us flexibility to how do you transition at times, or if we, as an example, the facilities committee still wants to go back and look at that IES, we'd have additional portables to be able to still do classrooms while potential construction may be going on.
Was the idea of putting modulars in Ash Creek socialized with staff at all through district leadership team or union reps, or I'm trying to think how the staff would react to, hey, we're putting modulars in Ash Creek.
We talked about it a lot in the budget process. Ashley definitely is in favor of it. I don't personally know how that
I
was
went and talked
communicated.
with their staff. I was asked to come out to a staff meeting, and we had conversations of concerns of the large classrooms. At that time, I shared with the staff that in the budget committees, if they weren't aware, that we were looking at other options to alleviate what they might be feeling next year, because I did have a handful of staff that were concerned because of some of the class size and how will we alleviate some of those pieces, and was very transparent with them in sharing. We are trying to work on this to give you guys a little bit of that reprieve. We do have within our with human resources, we have developed a protocol to work through some of those as well, of if there are larger class sizes, additional aids, as he said before, or other things. But we had shared with them that we were looking at potentially adding and looking at more space for them to, give some reprieve at different times to, if they need to pull out, they can have enough space to do it.
It is going to be an issue. I mean, that growth is happening. There's that lot there. The city of Monmouth is going through a hearings process to talk about converting some of the industrial land out on that end of town into residential. So, and classes are crowded. Some are. Bubbles are. Some aren't. Some are. So we know this is going to be an issue with the public. I'm sure you'll start getting questions, we'll start getting questions and concerns. Again, nobody really wants to see portables, but we know that we can't build classrooms right now. We don't know where they need to be and how many we need to have. We got told we didn't do the planning we needed to do last time, or the communication or something, I think, by having the bond go down. So we'll have to start from scratch, but these bubbles need some attention. And that's probably about the only way we can explain it to the public, is overall, we're not growing that much. So we cannot really look at reopening Henry Hill even necessarily. That's a solution people see. It's not the solution right now, because that would require redistricting and all of those things. And
again, I think that's a conversation with the facilities committee.
Yeah.
That there are options that probably can be on the table, but we need to, again, I think the analytics from a company that has background in that can give us a really good understanding of what the next 3 to 5 years, and even probably a little bit further, will be able, so we can make really good decisions based off of good information.
And the plan to use this at Ash Creek, will it be a teacher's classroom, or will it be an additional sort of floating resource?
we can't, since we haven't added a whole teacher, we can't really staff a whole new classroom. We do have this special ed classroom that does take place every day out in
Yeah,
the.
two special ed classrooms that don't have classrooms. We have one in the office and then one in a.
Right.
Yeah, so that could be that they will be moved out there though, I don't believe.
Right, so we could move those into classrooms and move a classroom out into the pod.
I would also say,
But-
we also see enrollments through August. So right now, my response is no, but that doesn't mean if I get another 10 kids at a 4th grade class,
Right.
we are not gonna have a choice but to make that into another classroom.
Right,
We
and
won't, we
hire
will
another
have to move
teacher.
in that direction.
Right.
So again, it also involves on, and that's why we have been clear as parents and people are calling us to try and get into either Ash Creek and or Monmouth. We are full. I mean, there's a handful of classes that as August comes, we might be able to open up, but it's not going to be a full K-5 opening at either of those schools because of some of the bubbles that we are seeing at 3, 4, 5 right now from that perspective.
You ready for a motion?
Sure.
I can't read it quite the way it says here because it isn't me that's approving it, it's a we.
Oh, yeah, okay.
I would move that we approve the purchase and installation of a dual portable classroom for the from Modular Building Systems for a total of $175,444,000 under the Salem Kaiser School District Cooperative Purchasing Agreement.
I'll second.
So it's been moved and seconded to purchase a modular. All those in favor, raise your right hand. Motion passes unanimously. So now,
Let's have lunch.
So what would be a study of all of our facilities
I think
once we get the?
we want to get the flow analytics. We want to be able to pull the facility committee together and start to have that conversation. I think what C says, pull out the previous plan that we had in again, 2016, correct?
That was our
So-
last update.
So looking at the 2016 plan, looking at the flow analytics, their data and what they're projecting based on our growth and just, I think they're looking at a handful of different things. Then yeah, I think that's going to be that whole process with the facilities committee. You know, and I think we're going to look at everything from do we need new schools to do we need to go back and look at redoing boundaries again.
Right.
I think it's
2016, because I was on the board in 2016, I don't remember.
That was the bond.
Oh, got it, okay.
Yeah, the plan.
Okay.
Because I think I think it's
It really
important
wasn't updated.
that all of those are going to need to play or be in
Okay.
in the conversation as we move forward and looking at what we thought we were going to do, what we now know from the analytics,
Okay.
and then other options that may be. I like to think outside the box. You all know that, so I think that will be a good, hearty conversation that we can have of what that looks like to support our community and,
Right.
you know, look towards moving to, can we move to smaller class sizes without breaking the bank and being able to still function at a high level as a school district?
And one thing we might think about is putting some information out on our website, letting the community know that we are planning to form a facility committee in the fall,
Yep.
and that we're looking for volunteers to
Good,
help with that.
yeah. Yeah, I think that's it. We'll have to really get out in front of this. Again, we probably won't be doing even the prep work until after school starts, but we definitely want to communicate it. It would be a difficult issue to explain and talk about, and help people understand.
I think we need to be open too about the money that we're using, how we got them, how we, you know,
Right.
it's not their general fund money that's
Right.
being used, and I think that's really important to communicate.
Yeah, I always trying
Okay,
helping people explain that is money we can only use on
Right.
expanding
Okay.
our capacity. And it literally is money that was going to be a match for the bond. Money we weren't going to ask them for in the bond, and we're going to have to use it now in this temporary fashion so that later on. But we're getting plenty of money to replace it. Thank you for Independence Link.
That might be another thing we should do, is some talking points so that we're all consistent, especially
Great.
since we don't have some board members
Perfect.
here tonight.
We'll
So
get that.
Right, yeah.
in lieu of redistricting, you know, the bond would have put
Right.
capacity into IES, where, you know, these are reusable.
Good.
We're launching the facility strategy committee in the fall. All good talking points if we're approached,
And where the funding's coming from.
and where the funding's coming from.
Okay.
And how we
great.
get that.
Yeah.
We can make that happen and get into a Friday report.
Yes.
All right.
Alrighty. So, thank you. So now, Alex Singer, who is on vacation, so kindly joining us this evening to talk about meal pricing.
Hello. So in our ODE report, review that we have this year, there's a formula for our paid meal prices. It's called the paid lunch equity tool, and there's a minimum that we need to be at, and currently we are beneath that minimum, so we are required by the USDA and ODE to increase our paid student prices and our adult prices. There should be some information in your board summary. And there's a couple different recommendations, a couple different options or what we could do. The target we need to shoot for is $2.92, and currently our weighted average is $2.63. We are allowed to cap it, an increase at 10 cents at our discretion, but we could go higher than that. So using their formula with weighted increase, we have a couple different recommendations. Increasing the paid student meal price by a quarter each for the elementary and the secondary meal prices. That will put our weighted average at $2.88, which is not quite to the $2.92, but it's above the 10 cent that we need to go as a minimum. Or we could go by 50 cents. And the resulting difference between the two is going up by 25 cents, it will cover this coming year, but looking at the projection and how it moves up every year, we would have to raise prices again the next year. If we moved it up by 50 cents, that would cover this coming year, the next year, and possibly a third year when I estimate how much it goes up, looking at the history of how much it's gone up every year. If we go up 25 cents, what that means to the families If they had a student that ate every single meal every day of the school year as a paid student, it would be an increase of $42.50 over the entire school year. If we went up 50 cents, it would be double that at about $85 for the year. The third option would be to buy some other amount, but those were the amounts that were seemed to make sense. Where we are currently in comparison to other districts in the county, you should have a handout for that as well. We are on the lower end in the county, with the average in the county for paid lunch is $2.94, and we are at $2.75 for secondaries. And for the elementary school, we're pretty close there. It's $2.53, and we are currently $2.50. Does that make sense?
So if we phased it in 25 cents this year,
We would
25
have
cents
to
the following year,
Yes,
that meets the requirement.
that would meet the requirement.
Is there a benefit to doing a 50-cent increase this year?
The only benefit to that would be going to the well once in a couple of years instead of every year. That would be a PR benefit.
That's as compared to a phased-in 25 cents.
Yes. So, that, which is another PR benefit. So,
Yeah.
we did look at the option of going to CEP with phasing out paid lunches altogether. And
Alex, will you talk a little bit about CEP, just a general overview of what that actually means so they understand that?
Sure. CEP is Community Eligibility Program. The two previous districts I've been in utilize that. They have a lot higher free or reduced percentage from students. What that does, it allows the district to claim all students, to pay for all student reimbursements utilizing the free students, because there's a multiplier and every student in the district eats for free. But if you need to have a reduced identified free student percentage at 62.5% to have that come to a wash-in to pay for all the students. We are currently at about just shy of 44%. So we're not even close to that 62.5%.
So district-wide, we're at 44% free.
For identified free students. Now, students that turn in families that turn in applications, that brings that number up, but those are not counted in this formula. That's federal guidelines.
And you can choose to do partials, so you don't have to say every school. You could look at just the elementaries, right? So we could do just K-5 or something, and determine the poverty levels, the free and reduced levels at that, and determine if that was over the 62.5% threshold. We could choose just to have all elementaries free and reduced, for example. So it's something we've looked at every year. Again, we do have a good percentage of paid meals that helps keep our program in the black, and haven't been able to meet that threshold quite yet. So
what is the free and reduced rate at the elementary school?
The identified student percentage, just K-5 would be the 44%. If we went K-12, it would be 38%.
And we could choose to do it at just Independence Elementary. They clearly meet the threshold. We could choose to do it there, so every student at Independence Elementary would get free lunch.
You wouldn't get kids to come back.
Well, again, there's different options, I think, that from that perspective of when we think about community and some of the things that we're looking at, the question really is it feasible to go from a community standpoint, a quarter this year, a quarter next year, or again, I'm going to say what Alex said, if we go to 50 cents, we may not have to have this discussions potentially up to 3 years from now, so we could be in a place to not having this conversation again for 3 years. But again, I don't disagree with you on that. It is a lot.
I just remember being in elementary, it was small.
Well, it takes us from being one of the lowest to now clearly being the highest, if you look
Yeah.
at comparisons. That doesn't.
When was the last time we raised prices?
That was before my tenure.
But we did year before last, and Mike thought it would last 2 to 3 years, but it hasn't.
And I'm going to just seeing how things are right now in public education, I think this will be a constant conversation for the next few years.
What I don't understand is we operate in the black, right? So this is funny math. Okay, this is
Federal math.
federal math.
It's federal math.
This is making sure that the free and reduced lunch is not subsidizing our paid lunch. Is that the way I read
Correct.
that?
Right. Yeah.
That is the way you, yep.
Basically,
want
the
any
government
federal
figures
money.
that if we're keeping these prices artificially low, the people who are paying somehow are getting some of the food that is being paid for with their federal reimbursement, which is intended only to go to their free and reduced students. And remember, in Oregon, Oregon pays an additional amount so that every student who is on reduced gets free lunch. And so
I'm interested in looking at IAS for free lunch. I mean, because just all of our schools are different, and it's okay if one, I think, is different than the other. As far as, I know there's, in Albany, there's a couple of schools that just started doing free lunch.
some districts do that.
Yeah.
They do one or two. They do a smaller group. They're elementaries that are clearly qualified for free and reduced. Yeah.
So if we do a single school, does that re-mess up this whole formula again to where we're gonna have to raise prices on the other schools even more, or?
Well, I think the percentage of paid students there is lower, so it would not affect that. But it would have other effects with other funding, because when you do CEP, you no longer have to do financial applications for the free and reduced lunch program at that particular school. But other programs that run out of the school, the Title I.
Title I.
Yes, right here, Title
Yes.
1A.
Then what we would need to do is still do a survey, but it would be called a financial survey. It's essentially the same thing to prove the financial in that group. So, but it would be one specifically to cover Title I and one other program, which escapes me off the top of my head.
So even if, but let me clarify my understanding, even if we decided to pursue CEP for independence,
Mhm.
elementary, we'd still have to raise a paid lunch prices.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And I guess my sense is, especially in today's economy, yearly increases in everything is going to be the norm. I mean, how many times does Starbucks raise the price of their coffee? I mean, not that these kids are buying Starbucks coffee, but oh, wait a minute, they are.
The high school kids are.
So that while it's appealing to say, well, we just raise the price once and then we're done, it's probably not going to happen that way. And so I'd be in favor of sort of setting the expectation that paid lunch prices are going to go up every year, just like they do at McDonald's, if the kids decide they want to eat at McDonald's or whatever else. I guess I'm thinking high school more, but still.
And like I said, we can do some, again, we've been having some conversations about just some things from a public communications perspective of why the increase and being able to, as best we can in general
Just send out
terms.
an announcement and say that we're raising the price of lunch so we can afford the new modular.
I'm not sure that would go well.
This isn't being recorded anyway.
Yes, it is. People will equate that. We have to make that clear.
Right. Yeah.
I think, the other thing is looking at, you could raise elementary prices different than secondary prices. For example, you could, even though we don't sell enough adult lunches, that increasing that price more would certainly, on a weighted basis, help a tiny amount. It won't help a lot because we sell so few adult meals, but that's kind of why for recommendations we gave you a range of options.
What's the formula again?
There's a tool, it's a multiple tab spreadsheet called the paid lunch equity tool. I'd be happy to sit down with you if you're interested in really.
I assumed there was some logic that you could just kind of lay it out, but yes, I forgot.
There's some guy in some room back in Washington in the FDA building thinking, what can I do in order to justify my existence?
Yeah, I'm just wondering if there are other factors that you can play with rather than just pricing, you know.
No, it's strictly based on the pricing, on the paid lunches.
Yeah, I'm sure you can put the free and reduced and size of the district.
What happens if we don't do anything?
Well,
We get audited next year and we could lose funding.
The less they will get us.
Yeah, they could take away our funding for free and reduced lunch. Same thing that would happen if they find enough errors in our free and reduced applications or anything else we do. They can actually take away our federal funding for free and reduced lunch.
And again, I think this will be a constant conversation we will be having for the next handful of years.
I think I feel better raising it 25 cents this year and then 25 cents next year if we need to. I don't feel 50 cents is a lot, I think.
You want to frame that in the form of a motion?
But I want to talk about IES too.
Well, they're independent though, right? I mean,
Right.
it isn't one or the other.
So let me ask you this, Alex, if the board made a decision, or if the board made the decision to increase it by 25%, but asked to go back.
5 cents.
25 cents, I apologize, 25 cents. 25 cents, I'll say it again. If we increase by 25 cents, could we still go look at the options of CEP, or does that have to be done at a specific time during the year?
It has to be done at a specific time during the year, so we could look at it for the following year,
Okay,
but not for this current year.
It's March or April, way before the end.
so spring, really looking in the spring at that as an option.
Right.
Yes.
And
So you would
again,
anticipate coming back in August again next year? Or July?
Possibly so.
or whenever you like.
Yeah.
You can make it earlier. Yeah.
We could make it earlier. Unfortunately, this year they released the PLE tool about a month later than they have in previous
Yeah.
years because of all the turmoil in Washington, is my supposition. But it was considerably later this year than in previous years, so hopefully we could come at an earlier time.
They tweak the formulas apparently each year, so they change it.
Is a part of the formula the volume of paid meals?
Mm-hmm.
So if you increase the volume of paid meals by marketing or somehow increase that volume over the
Right.
next year, you might be able to avoid the second 25-cent increase?
Yeah.
It's certainly possible. We would still, the 25 cent increase still will put us below the required amount.
Weighted.
The weighted required amount. But since we're capped at this year we only have to do 10 cents minimum. We would still be a little bit, but we may not have to do as large of one.
Yeah.
But it
so-
also depends on what their recommendation is here, because the recommendation in the past, they started doing this in 2011, and the raise in weighted average requirement has gone up anywhere between 5 and 9 cents per year. I think the one year was even a little higher, but it's different every year. We don't know until we get our spreadsheet with the formulas.
So can we take advantage of the fact that we're behind the curve and just do 10 cents a year?
It might, depending on the formula.
Yeah, I
Depending
could
on-
run those. I could run those numbers.
Even if we're behind next year, we can still say.
We can cap it
We
at
can
10,
cap
right,
it
as long
at
as they give us a
10
cents.
10% cap.
And if we keep getting farther behind, that's their problem, not ours.
Mhm. Yeah, the 25 cents this year would put us really close to where the number is. And which would mean the next year we may be able to do a smaller increase.
I guess the more I think about it, the more I'm in favor of doing a 10 cent, you started with 10 cent increase next year, and the year after that, and the year after that, and the year after that.
Well, it's a 10 cent for the weighted average, so I would have to run the numbers to make sure, but it would be in that neighborhood.
I mean, the 10 cents is a calculated amount as well.
Yes, it's part of the weighted average. Because currently we're at 263, and with the quarter, it would raise our weighted average to 88 cents, so that is 25 cents.
And it gets us closer to 292, which is what they actually would require if they didn't have the cap. We'd be going to 292 no matter what.
But they put the cap in.
But they
for a
put the
reason,
cap
right?
of 10 cents, so.
Let's use the cap.
Is there something that the board needs to be aware of concerns in a year from now? You know, are we talking just if we were to do with the 10 cent cap? I just want to make sure that we have all the information, that we're not all of a sudden going to get hit 2 years from now with having to do $1 because we're that far behind.
The 10 cent cap has been in place since they started doing this in 2011.
Okay.
That has not changed. I can't predict what
Okay.
Washington will do.
But from a historical
perspective, I would think that the 10 cent cap would stay in place.
I think that's okay. Thank you, Alex.
And it's certainly the easiest thing to present to the public if there's a concern is we're required by law to raise the price of our lunches by 10 cents. Any other amount is a decision that we make. I like putting the blame on the feds.
And so we can't do free lunches at IES this year, but
Correct.
But for the next
We
20 years.
could look at that for the following year,
And we will make sure that we look at that and have
we
that
will look at all
discussion.
any school that is even close.
And then Dory, we need to figure out how to get parents to incentivize them to fill out their
Yes.
financial report, even though the reward isn't getting free lunch for your
even-
kids.
I mean, if your school qualifies for free lunch, isn't that how you calculated?
Not for the CEP.
Not with CEP, there is no more application going out to get financial data
Got it.
from the families.
Got it.
We would have to do a financial survey, which is possible and can look very similar to the application.
Well, you can just
It's using
continue-
the same numbers.
Yeah, you can just continue doing the applications too, you don't need to stop doing that. right?
You have to do a different form.
You have to advertise it, and theoretically, it has to be paid for out of different funds. It could be done by the same staff, but the funding would have to change. It's certainly a surmountable obstacle. It's not insurmountable. by any
Districts
means.
do it. Districts do it all over the state. It's just a different way to calculate. You hopefully get the participation to be able to calculate your poverty rates or title purposes.
And I've been in 2 districts that have done CEP, so if you have questions outside of this, I'd be happy to give you more information on it.
I move that we increase student lunch fees by 10 cents.
And adult prices?
But whatever, is it the same minimum there?
It's different. If you look a little farther down, we are below the state minimum for adult meal prices for both breakfast and lunch. Currently, we are at 2 for breakfast and 3 for lunch, and the state minimum is $2.43 for breakfast and $3.65 for lunch.
And how many adult lunches and breakfast do we do, like 10?
More than that.
You do more than that.
But it's not an excessive amount,
Yeah.
but we are below the
Staff,
state minimum.
occasional parents, we actually purchase lunches for the Monmouth and Independence PD officers who participate in their lunch buddy program, so we have some. But we absolutely have to do those. We're not, it's not weighted average, we're below the minimum.
I mean, the bare minimum we would need to do for breakfast would be, well, 43 cents. But that would put us at the state minimum if we went 50 cents or $1. We've had a couple of different recommendations here, because if we were going to raise prices for the students, we definitely want to make sure that it's obvious that we're doing it for the adults as well. So it's
Right.
The principle is do the minimum for all, both students and adults. Increase the minimum amount, so.
could we go off an odd amount instead of the?
Yeah,
Well, yeah, it doesn't need-
$2.43 makes it a little harder on our
250
cashiers.
would be okay, or whatever.
So if we went to 250 and maybe 275 for breakfast and lunch.
Because they have different they have a different breakfast price. All students are free breakfast, that's the other thing
Yeah.
thrown in, which we have chosen to do as a district, which we don't get any particular extra money for, but adult prices, we do have a different breakfast and lunch price. So if we went to round it up to the nearest quarter on the minimum required prices would be $2.50 and $3.75.
Sounds good to me. I mean, again, I come back to Steve's point. We've got a program that's running in the black right now. We don't need more money. We just need to prove to the feds that we're not subsidizing our paid lunches.
Correct.
So let's do
You
the
can always
minimum.
use more money. They get PERS increases too. And the feds aren't going to give us more reimbursement because we're getting more PERS costs. So they could always use some more money, but right, we don't have to gouge people. That's never our intent.
Right, right.
Our intent is only to stay in just above.
Yes. We should be in the black and legal.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yes.
That's always lovely.
So let's do that.
So the suggested motion
Second.
is actually to mention both of those prices for student meals and adult meals.
So I'll rephrase. I move we increase student paid meal prices by 10 cents and adult meals by 50
50 and 75.
50 and 75 for breakfast and lunch for the 2018-19 school year. They're close enough.
Okay, so the motion is to raise,
Student paid meal prices by 10 cents and adult breakfast price by 50 cents and adult lunch price by 75 cents.
and do we have a second?
Anybody with me on this?
I'll second.
Okay, so the motion is for a 10-cent increase, and then for the adults, 50 cents for breakfast and 75 cents for lunch. All those in favor, raise your right hand.
Cheapskates win.
See you next year.
All right. Thank you.
And we'll make a note to, and I know Alex, you do it every spring, but we'll have bring that back to you guys in early spring just to have that conversation again for, I'm gonna say, looking at all the elementaries again, not that that will qualify, but at least taking that look, and is it worth moving in that direction?
So the next thing on our agenda is policy updates, first reading.
Yeah, so of this, as I shared in the Friday report, we are beginning the process of reviewing policy this first round, and I just want to acknowledge both Christina and Peggy, as well as Adriana. We have spent 3 hours now already in looking at, first looking at policies that we no longer need. So a majority on this list are deletions. They are out of date, and or we already have current policy that is in place, and for whatever reason it was not removed. You will see 2 policies that are there, and then in August you're going to see these as a second reading to a final, as well as potentially we are going to bring you the remaining, I think it was 7 that we had that are required. We were working through a couple of them and have asked, because of the report that we did with OSBA, we do get 25 for free, and so we're working with them to get those to be able to then bring for first reading in August. So the two, just again, if there are questions, there's two that are moving forward with approval. That is JHCD/JHCDA, which is tied to medications. And really what that is doing, you will see on this list a deletion of JHCDA-G1 and a deletion of JHCD-G1. So they were separate policies. What they have done is combined and really looking at who delivers medication, what's the processes put forth. So they just took those two policies and put them back together. What I have been told or have researched is that they were previously together, they separated them, and now they're back together again for whatever reason. And so that's the first, one of the first policies for approval. And then the second one is just EBBB, which is dealing with just policy in regards to injury and illness, that it's being reported as quickly as possible. If there's an injury on the job, that we are getting that information in an appropriate manner moving forward. So those are the two just first readings of everything else on that list is a deletion. As sent to us and advised by the OSBA audit that we had done on our policies. So we will continue to move through really there are 30 of the required and or highly recommended, and then we will continue through, we'll probably bring back to the board a recommendation for the remaining 121 that is, there's some just advisement to either revise or relook at. So,
we have those too.
Right, we have they're in place, but looking at those potentially to revise. So we are meeting again the end of July to go through the required, and then we will come probably with a recommendation for the remaining 121 and the approach to get us in compliance from a policy standpoint. Really, we don't have any action tonight on these unless there's questions.
I just had a comment on the first one, the medication. There's a choice to make in that draft policy for CPR and first aid being either recommended or required. I think you're supposed to strike out one of them.
Yes, we will. Let me go to that one.
It's like on the first page, I think.
Make sure I have the right one.
So I want to thank you guys for doing all that.
Yes, we will make that adjustment.
Can you tell me which one it was?
It's the JH1.
It's the JHCD, JHCDA. I'm not sure we had that conversation, so we will make sure that, I know that.
It's the third paragraph down.
Yes. And I will I will connect with Julie to make sure we may be already doing one of the other, so I just want to confirm with her of which one we will go with.
Strong feeling one way or the other.
Yeah.
Consistent. Is there a way to do a tracker so we can see which of all of them?
We are doing that as we go. So yes, we just started that in an Excel document.
Could we get that as part of our board package? So
Yep.
we can kind of
Board packet or Friday report?
Or could it just be shared on the Google Drive?
Yes, we could share yes, we can. Yeah,
Yeah.
so we will clean that up and give that to you through the Google Drive so you guys can take a
The summary
look at
that you
it.
gave in terms of, these that are deletions, these that are going to be, for second reading, that would be just kind of helpful in the table.
Okay.
And so I would want it as a board package.
So we're down to comments by individual members.
Nothing for me.
Don?
I've already talked too much.
Hey, I'm sick, I don't want to say
I don't
anything.
say anything.
So items for action at future meetings include the organizational chart, the calendar for the next school year, again, the policy updates, talking about the facilities committee, and reviewing the working agreement and the district goals stuff. And with that, we are adjourned.